Welcome to this unique video on understanding the root causes of economic crises in 10 countries around the world. The past few years have been challenging for many nations, as they have faced a variety of economic shocks that have had profound effects on their economies, businesses, and citizens. One of the primary causes of the economic crisis has been COVID-19 pandemic, which has caused unprecedented disruption to global trade and commerce. The pandemic has led to reduced demand for goods and services, widespread business closures, and high levels of unemployment. In addition to the pandemic, some countries have been grappling with political instability and social unrest, which has further exacerbated their economic challenges. These factors have created a perfect storm that has left many countries struggling to stay afloat. Some of the countries that have been hardest hit by the economic crisis include Argentina, Pakistan, and Venezuela, all of which have seen significant declines in their currencies, high inflation rates, and rising levels of poverty. Despite the challenges, however, there are also signs of hope and resilience. Many countries are working hard to address the underlying causes of the crisis and to rebuild their economies through innovative policies and strategies. Governments are introducing measures to stimulate economic growth, such as investment in infrastructure, education, and job creation. Businesses are also adapting to the changing landscape by adopting new technologies and business models. Sri Lanka was facing its worst economic crisis. Shortages of basic foods, fuel, and medicine, and 10-hour daily power cuts are normal. Inflation is running at 53%. But it is not the last country. Many middle and low-income countries are fighting with a three-pronged crisis: the pandemic, the rising borrowing costs, and the rise in food and fuel prices after Russia's invasion. In this unique economy video, we will take a look at the economic crisis affecting several countries. Explore some of the solutions that are being proposed to address these challenges in future videos. We will also examine the root causes of the crisis in future videos on each of these countries, the impact it is having on citizens and businesses, and what can be done to create a more stable and prosperous future for everyone. According to research, these 10 countries are on the verge of an economic crisis. Since the Taliban took control, Afghanistan's economic and humanitarian crisis has worsened. Foreign aid was halted, sanctions were imposed, and bank transfers were halted as a result of the country's refusal to recognize the Taliban government, leaving the country in an acute economic crisis. Approximately 55% of the population is food insecure, and government employees are not paid. This year in Argentina, inflation is expected to exceed 97.6%. The peso is now trading at nearly a 50% discount in the black market, reserves are critically low, and bonds are trading at only 20 cents on the dollar. This figure is less than half of what it was in 2020. Estimated debt default of $500 million, Argentina holds the world record for the most sovereign defaults. Pakistan is now using 40% of its reserves to pay interest. The annual inflation rate reaches 31.5% in February 2023, the highest level since June 1974. Fuel prices have risen by 90% since the government discontinued fuel subsidies. Its foreign exchange reserves held by central bank decreased by 16.1% to $3.09 billion, barely enough for 5 weeks of imports. The government asked people to drink less tea last month because they are major tea importers. In February 2023, Egypt's inflation rate reached nearly 40.26%, putting nearly one-third of the country's 103 million people in poverty. Egypt now has a debt-to-GDP ratio of 92% in June 2022 and 87.2% in December 2022, and the government's reform program to reduce water, fuel, and electricity subsidies has exacerbated the situation. The central bank raised interest rates and devalued the currency, increasing the country's foreign debt. Laos inflation was at 8.54% in May 2022, which peaked at 41.26% in February 2023, which is a nearly 450% increase. It is facing the risk of defaulting on its foreign loans for several months. Moody's has categorized the country as junk. Laos currency, the kip is down by more than a third against the US dollar this year. Lebanon's currency lost more than 90% of its value, and it defaulted on $90 billion in debt, equal to 170% of its GDP, as a result of a protracted civil war, political dysfunction, and terrorist assaults. The annual inflation rate in Lebanon rose to 123.53% in January 2023 from an 18-month low of 121.99% in December 2022, largely as a result of higher housing and transportation costs. Since the coup, the Sudanese economy has been pushed to the brink by a lack of foreign finance and poor economic management. The Sudanese army overthrew the civilian government in a coup on October 25, 2021, further damaging the country's economy. Because the central bank has stated that it will not intervene in currency valuation, prices have soared as banks and exchange firms have been left to determine the value of the currency based on supply and demand. Venezuela's economy deteriorated as poverty, inflation, and shortages escalated. Although the government reports that the annual inflation rate fell from 686% in 2021 to 234% in 2022, it remains among the highest in the world. Access to basic commodities and important services such as food, health, education, protection, water, sanitation, and hygiene continues to be severely impacted by the crisis in Venezuela. 94% of Venezuelans live in poverty as of 2022, while 76% live in extreme poverty. In the past, Zimbabwe had hyperinflation, therefore inflation has been a significant problem there. In August 2022, the stated inflation rate was approximately 285%, resulting in considerable erosion of the purchasing power of the populace. The nation's central bank has struggled to preserve price stability and keep inflation under control. Fuel and pharmaceutical shortages have resulted from foreign currency shortages, which are another important concern for Zimbabwe's economy. The government has taken a number of steps to address this issue, including implementing an auction system for foreign money and attempting to attract international investment. This YouNik economy video examines the global economic catastrophe caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, governmental instability, and societal unrest. Several countries have struggled to survive the crisis. Notwithstanding the hurdles, several countries are attempting to restore their economy through new policies and tactics, giving hope and resilience. This video examines the economic crisis in 10 nations and its effects on citizens and businesses. In upcoming videos, we will examine the causes of the crisis in each country and the potential solutions.